Hi, everybody in Psychology 267, Forensic Psychology. Well, this is a bit ironic. The last thing we talked about in the most recent video was the DSM-5, which is the book that we use to diagnose people in psychology and other mental health professions. Today, we're going to talk just briefly. I'm only going to hit the highlights. You still should read the chapter, or the section, I should say, number 4, about psychological disorders and how they are related to court cases, especially criminal cases. After this, I hope you feel like a psychologist, like you can diagnose all your family and friends and all of your exes and everything. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, huh? Well, anyway, let's get started. Section 4. You ready? Here we go. First of all, clinical and counseling psychology doctorate programs do include a great deal of training about how to use the DSM. Right now, it's the DSM-5 that's being used. It is a book that if we were in class together, I would pass around and you'd probably hear me joke, oh, just memorize it. You can't. It's over 900 pages long, and it discusses every single psychological condition that a person could have. But here we're going to talk about how these conditions, some of them, are related to legal problems. So first of all, an intellectual disability. You have to have an IQ below 70. By the way, this used to be called mental retardation. Now that's considered a bad word or bad phrase to use. You know, it's judgmental. Intellectual disability, but not just an IQ below 70. It has to emerge first during childhood, and you have a lack of adaptive functioning. You can't do the things that people your age should be able to do, and things they should know at certain ages are not known. So therefore, if you commit a crime, your attorney might argue that you're low functioning, you're very childlike, an intellectual disability. Autism spectrum disorder, I could talk all day about this one because in abnormal psychology, we go over it for quite a long period of time. But what I want you to know is that it's a lack of social awareness, poor decision making, not knowing, I should say, what to say or how to act in given social situations. For the court, I've evaluated kids who will tell their principal that they could easily make a bomb and bring it to school. You can't say things like that. But people with autism, they often don't know any better. They will act in a dangerous manner or say something inappropriate, not realizing that it's wrong. ADHD. This is not usually a good criminal defense, but sometimes you do things without thinking. Most people can think and then they act. People with ADHD, they often act and then they think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder, two more childhood conditions. Think about it this way: attitude, behavior. Oppositional defiant disorder is when you have a horrible attitude. Nobody's going to tell you what to do. Can you be arrested for that as a kid? Absolutely. Try cussing at a police officer or threatening a teacher or something. You will get in a lot of legal trouble. It's the attitude. Whereas conduct disorder is related to behavior. You lie, cheat, steal, violate the rights of other people, conduct disorder. If you keep doing that as an adult, we would say that you have antisocial personality disorder. It has been long-lasting. It's not just a childhood phase anymore, and you violate the rights of people and break the law. Conduct disorder, bad behavior in children. Now let's go to the other end of the life spectrum for a moment. Dementia, especially Alzheimer's dementia, is far more common in the elderly. If someone commits a crime and they have Alzheimer's, their attorney could argue the person didn't know what he or she was doing. Their brain is so deteriorated, they couldn't make a rational and informed decision. See, it can relate to a court case. Substance-related conditions, here's what I want you to know. There's 4 levels: use, abuse, no, I got that backwards. Use, intoxication, abuse, and dependence. That goes in order of severity. That's why I changed the order right now that I just set it in for you. Use. Do you use alcohol? Marijuana? It's now legal in Arizona, isn't it? Other drugs, even caffeine or nicotine? You are a user. Did you do too much and it got you sick? Intoxication. Is there a pattern of you doing too much and you don't seem to learn from it? Abuse. But dependence is different, also known as addiction. You can't stop. You get withdrawal symptoms if you do. It's like food. You can't go without it. And tolerance. You need more and more of it to make you feel the same high. That means you have a dependence problem. Schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. Psychotic means you are out of touch with reality. Schizophrenia is a form of a psychotic disorder, and you have any two of these 5 symptoms for a month straight, plus your functioning is deteriorating over 6 months. What are those symptoms? Delusions. You believe things that are simply not true. You think you're Jesus or Donald Trump, or you think that the government is after you, or you think that creatures from other planets are invading your brain, things that are not true. Hallucinations. One of your 5 senses or more is playing a trick on you. Hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that don't exist, smelling things, tasting things, feeling things that are not there. Hallucinations. By the way, the most common one, hearing voices. Could you have that and delusions? Of course you could. Most people with schizophrenia have all 5 of these symptoms for at least a month, and they're deteriorating for 6 months, getting worse. Disorganized speech. Is your speech bizarre? People don't understand what you're saying. You talk about strange things. You barely talk at all. Disorganized behavior. The way that you act, your mannerisms, all kinds of aspects of your behavior. And negative symptoms. You lack things a person should have. Eye contact, communication, emotions, negative symptoms. So even though you only need 2 to have schizophrenia, most people with this condition have all of those. Delusional disorder. What if you only have 1 symptom of schizophrenia and it's delusions, beliefs that are not true? By the way, this comes up in court a lot with stalkers. They really do believe that this celebrity is in love with them or something of that nature. So that is probably what the attorney would argue for the person. He or she couldn't help it. They're delusional. They believe something that has no truth to it. This famous celebrity doesn't even know you, much less feel love for you. That is a delusion that is pretty common in court cases when it comes to stalkers. Mood disorders. People who are depressed don't usually commit crimes, but with bipolar, it happens, and sometimes with depression, but more bipolar. When people are unstable emotionally, extreme highs and lows in cycles that last days or weeks at a time, bipolar. Depression, is it so bad it made you out of touch with reality? It could happen. Anxiety disorders. People who are stressed out and anxious don't usually commit crimes, but post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety-related condition. You might have flashbacks and nightmares that make you act out from something horrible that happened to you. Dissociative disorders. When you dissociate, you split apart from yourself. Amnesia is the most common one. You forget things, but that's a little boring compared to this one. Dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. There is the real you, the host personality, and then there is the alters, the alternate personalities that take over your brain and body. And by the way, when the alters come out and take over you, you have amnesia for those times. When you pop back into being you again, you won't know what those alters were doing with your body. Isn't that crazy? Dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. Now, I should have warned you already. This is a PG-13 class. We do talk about adult topics because we are in college. We're allowed to do that. Sexual disorders. I'm not going to get into graphic sexual details with you. That's not my job. I want you to know conditions that are seen in court cases. Paraphilias, abnormal sexual behaviors that are not acceptable by society standards. So, exhibitionism, flashing yourself. If you showed somebody your elbows, that wouldn't be anything to be arrested for, would it? But in our society, your private parts, your genitalia, your buttocks, female breasts, yep, that is in our society what we would call taboo. But why do these people do it? It's the sexual thrill of making you startled. If the person wants to see it, well, that's not what exhibitionists want. They want to startle you. Voyeurism, people who watch other people. Now, if you were just walking the dog and you see somebody, changing their clothing or in the bathroom in your neighbor's window, you would not be considered a voyeur unless, of course, you go back there night after night trying to recreate what happened previously. Voyeurs spend a lot of time and energy trying to watch people in compromising positions of whether they're changing clothing or in sexual acts or showering or bathing. Voyeurs will go to a lot of trouble for this. Fetishism. Is it something that's not a human that turns you on sexually? That would be a fetish. If you're a man and it's woman's underwear or a woman's shoe or any type of object that you think of rather than a person, a fetish. And the last couple I want you to know, fraudurism. You know those things on the end of your tennis shoes or any shoes with laces? Aglets, the little plastic part. A lot of people don't know that has a name. Well, same thing here. Fraudurism. Rubbing, grinding, touching people in a non-consenting sexual way. The person doesn't want to be touched or rubbed up against like that. Well, that would be fraudurism. That is a sexual disorder. Pedophilia. People who are primarily interested in prepubescent children, 13 or younger. However, there's also another way to look at this. The child must be 4 more or years younger than the perpetrator. So someone who's 18 and engaging in sexual acts with a minor who's 17 and a half, we wouldn't call that person a pedophile. Is it still illegal? Probably in most states, but pedophilia, we say more than a 4-year age difference, and that one person is an adult. And if not, one person 16 or 17, the other person is prepubescent. Don't worry about all of those details. Just kind of have an idea what it is and what it isn't. Masochism. People who want to physically hurt other people to get their sexual gratification. Obviously, somebody could be injured or killed, if not just humiliated. So I got a little ahead of myself. The masochist is the one receiving it, whereas the person who is the sadist is the one inflicting the physical harm or the torture or the humiliation. Sadism and masochism. Again, got a little ahead of myself there, didn't I? Impulse control disorders. We're almost done with this chapter, by the way. What is the problem here? Well, if you get arrested and it's a court case, you would say you can't control your impulses. Now, I'm going to go over the one that's the most widely accepted in legal circles, and then two that, well, really aren't. You're going to hear John Douglas talk about this in the book too. Hear about it. If you read it, I should say, unless you have an audiobook, you'll hear about it. But still, John Douglas will explain it to you. Intermittent explosive disorder. You blow up basically in rage. Intermittent explosive disorder. You can't control your anger. Now, how do we know that the person is not doing this on purpose? Well, I'll tell you. Because it's usually their own stuff that they break, or something that they wouldn't want to break, like you have to repair the holes in the walls now, because you're the one who punched holes in them. Uncontrollable fits of anger. Intermittent explosive disorder. Kleptomania. You can't help yourself stealing things. And pyromania. You can't help yourself but to set fires. Now, why are these controversial? These last two, especially? I'll tell you. John Douglas, in his book Anatomy of Motive, talks about something the FBI invented many decades ago. They call it the policeman at the elbow test. Now, policeman is a little sexist, isn't it? We would now say officer. But anyway, would you really steal that stuff if there was a police officer right next to you? Would you really be setting that fire if a police officer was watching? Well, that kind of shows you that a lot of people who claim to have kleptomania, stealing, and pyromania, fire setting, are just using it as an excuse. They really can control it, because if a police officer was there, they sure wouldn't be doing that. Personality disorders. This is the last thing here, I'm pretty sure. Yep, it is. I had to cheat and look what the next page looked like. So, you don't have to know all the details here. All you need to know, a lifelong pattern of your personality being a problem for you. It's inflexible, it's maladaptive, you can't seem to change it, you don't even realize how bad the problem is, it's not getting better or worse, it's pervasive, it's in all settings and situations that you act in such a bad way. So let's go over a couple. Narcissistic, you're totally self-centered, it drives people away. Borderline, you are extreme in your emotions, love and hate, ups and downs. There's no in-between for you. Your life is a roller coaster, basically. I don't mean really a roller coaster, I mean metaphorically. Antisocial. A lot of people get this wrong. They're talking about asocial, not being sociable. Antisocial means you are against society. Remember we talked about conduct disorder? This is the adult version of it. You lie, cheat, steal, hurt people, manipulate people, do whatever you can do to get your way. Couldn't a person be like that and also be narcissistic or borderline? Absolutely. You don't have to have just one personality disorder. You could have multiple. Do you know anybody that's an adult that's very difficult to be around, and you're not the only person to feel that way? Well, guess what? I'm thinking that person probably has a personality disorder. So you can see how this is a defense in court cases too. Oh, my client couldn't help himself or herself. He or she has this personality disorder. Well, there again, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of sympathy from judges or juries in court cases, but there's an expression among defense attorneys. Let's fly it up the flagpole and see if it flies. If it's talking about a food analogy, well, let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. Those are expressions that they use. They will often use the psychological condition that the person has been diagnosed with as a defense for the crime. If not to get out of it completely, at least to get some leniency, saying, my client isn't a bad person. Look at his psychological problem. That's why it happened. So, that's what I want you to know about Chapter 4, Psychological Disorders. You should now have enough information to take the exam on Reading Packets Section 1 through 4. That's it. Take care.